The Honourable Member for Gatineau. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not certain if I'm happy to rise and debate this bill, because honestly there are so many mistakes in it, it doesn't make any sense. People have to understand that Bill C-38 is the budget implementation bill that was tabled in Parliament on the 29th of March 2012, and that it makes other changes. And I think that the key expression in this bill, which is that it's implementing other measures, because I think it talks about everything but the budget, everything under the sun that you will find, it's in here. And yet if you listen to the colleagues across the way, it's as though it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're talking about a document, and this is why the opposition is so against it. It is a 421-page document with over 100 that talks about the environment without really saying too much, 29 pages of fiscal measures. It has 51 sections only on tax measures. And these are the people who call themselves the great managers of economic affairs of the state. I think that because these people call themselves the conservative government, that they're good managers. And I think that more and more people are realizing every day that this is not the reality. We receive tons of emails. And I'm sure I have conservative friends on my Facebook, and I'm not exaggerating. It is full of comments. And if you don't listen, if the conservative colleagues here aren't listening, they will be surprised all in good time. A little comparison here, and this struck me when I was doing some analysis of the bill, is that we're talking about a budget implementation bill. These are things that we have to deal with in a parliament. And from 94 to 2005, these pages had, on average, 67. They were on average 67 pages long. But since the fantastic conservative government here, these great managers of the state affairs of state, they have moved up to an average of 309 pages on average. And after this, we have been insulted time and again, and we'll probably spend the rest of the time until the next budget implementation bill, which will probably be even bigger, that we voted against this and we voted against that. The problem with this kind of a bill, and I know some other people talked about this as well, maybe we didn't say it enough because they haven't listened to us, but there may be some excellent measures here that we might, as an opposition, have supported. But unfortunately, the great majority of them don't fall into that category. But because they chose this vehicle, which is the mammoth bill, this Trojan horse bill, you can call it whatever you want, the fact remains that it's a bill that hides all kinds of things within it and shows the true face of the government and what they're trying to do. So that's what's unfortunate, because I remember I had certain hopes at the time when I heard, because of course when I lost my first election in 2006, I thought, you know what, Madam Speaker, this is a new government that really believes in democracy and transparency, and that's going to use every means at its disposal to do things differently. So I thought, well, that's a small price to pay to really see democracy in action. Well, it didn't take me long to wake up and smell the coffee. It's certainly not with this party. And this is probably part of their ancient history, or the stories that they tell each other when they're having parties. But this is certainly not the reality here. And on the contrary, there are all of the old habits of the Liberal Party too, bringing out an omnibus bill and hiding a few things in there. And what I don't understand is that they have a majority. They can do what they like. And we know very well at the end of the day they're going to win the vote. So what's the problem with having a more in-depth study? Not for the pleasure of doing so. I'm not asking them to do that to make us happy, but for the people of Canada, the people we're supposed to represent. Because all we hear, Madam Speaker, over the last few weeks is as though this was some kind of war of attrition between the Conservatives and the New Democratic Party. That's not the case. It's our duty as representatives. We saw Conservative colleagues who got up at some times, but not here in the House, of course, because they don't have permission from the great Prime Minister to say that. But when they were in their own ridings, they forgot there were cameras around, and we were able to see some of their true colors. And like anybody else, I've been a backbencher on the government side, and sometimes it's a bit frustrating because sometimes we're the last to know. Although when I was there in 2004, we did have a system whereby we were able to have some explanations on bills that we were voting on, and literally we were doing what the people of our ridings wanted us to do. And I have to say that as a new MP arriving here in 2004, that's the thing I liked the best, because then we really had the chance to have a certain influence on what was going on in the parliamentary life. But unfortunately, we've only seen all of these small incursions happening since, and it's unfortunate because with so many pages and so many measures in the bill, I defy anyone, and I'd like to ask the backbenchers on the other side if they're really aware of all the subtleties that are involved in this bit. I studied law, I read and reread this bill, and I can't say that it's the easiest reading I've ever done, nor the most exciting, but on that level, you have to recognize that the devil is sometimes in the details, and oh boy, there are details. All we know is that it is really going to change the face of this country. Maybe that's what they wanted to do, and it's their right as a majority government. I wouldn't take that away, but there is a way of doing things, and this is certainly not the proper way, the way things have gone here with Bill C-38. When I look at this, and we're often told that this is a government that creates jobs. This is what they always are going on and on about, and that's what it says on their advertising and on their business cards, whoever they are. We're the government that creates jobs. They used to talk about 600,000, now they say 750,000. But these are nice lines that are prepared for them, but that really are pretty hollow. They don't tell us much. The official, the parliamentary budget officer, came, and you can see how polite they are. Not only are they in a majority situation here, and I said 421 pages, I repeat that, with 69 bills that are amended or repealed, 573 clauses, and if we can't even allow the opposition to express themselves on this without insulting them, in any case, the parliamentary budget officer came and said to us that no, job creation, it's not really true. And I look at what he said. He says that this bill would indeed result in the loss of 43,000 jobs in Canada. So when you combine that with previous cutbacks of this government, this figure climbs to 102,000 lost jobs. That's not job creation. When you see that programs are being shut down and measures are being changed where there'll be fewer evaluations, it's certainly not job creation. And when at a time when the world economy is shaky, it's the least you could say, it's not the best time to try and make massive job creation. If the government's counting on the private sector to do all of this for them, I think that they have a surprise coming. In my riding of Gatineau, which is just on the other side of the river, there's a great deal of insecurity. They see how this government is cutting public service jobs, how they're going to take services away from a population that needs it, and it's very tough. It's certainly not the way of doing things. All of this is to say this bill would have benefited from much more analysis, that we could have talk to the people in our respective ridings and saying we don't agree with the policies, but we certainly had the opportunity to express ourselves on it. And I wanted to say that I had many other things I would like to have discussed about this budget, but unfortunately that's all the time that we have, and I thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Member for Chambly-Bordura. And I have to tell him in advance a very brief question. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like my colleague to speak a little bit more about how the people of Gatineau feel that not at all secure. And I know what the people in my riding feel like. I'd like to hear a little bit more from her.
There's 1 minute left for the Honourable Member for Gatineau. It's unfortunate that the people of Gatineau have so little time to have their views represented, but anyway, what makes our workers secure, these workers here who are so precious and give us such important services, they get letters saying that perhaps their section will be targeted, and maybe it'd be your section, we don't know who. Imagine working in those circumstances, and even worse, according to my information, they'll probably have the details once the House adjourns. So talk about transparency. So expect word around June 26th, because that's when the government is going to make its announcements. When we're not